Hola, hola, hola a todos amigos, todos seguidores de Perio MX. Estamos en una emisión especial de Perio MX otra vez. Estamos en la octava temporada. Para mí es muy especial el hablar acerca de esta emisión, que es una emisión, pues, muy reflexiva, que da como introducción a lo que vamos a escuchar a continuación, una entrevista breve con un personaje que yo admiro mucho, que yo admiro mucho. Hace unos cuantos días estuve platicando con algunos compañeros de mi curso de plástica periodontal, eh, si hay publicaciones, si hay evidencias de situaciones clínicas que hayan marcado mi vida y sin duda no podría yo dejar de vivir sin pensar en una publicación tan especial como la que se publicó en el año de 1994 y que, bueno, yo la leí posteriormente, yo conocí esta publicación después, en el año 2005 tuve contacto, no, 2004 tuve contacto con esta publicación y fue muy especial. Esta publicación es esta, vean. Resulta que en el año de 1994 el doctor Stur Niemann y el doctor Niklaus Lang publican en el Periodontorio 2000 este artículo que es gratamente especial. La movilidad dental y su racionalidad biológica con su ferulización, con la ferulización dental. 1994, el periodo de 2000 era un contexto muy distinto al que vivimos ahora. Definitivamente, pacientes con estas características, sus dientes serían extraídos y, sin embargo, en esta misma publicación de 1994 se pudo observar a un control a largo plazo, la posibilidad de salvar dientes con esta ferulización. La realidad es que esto transformó mucho lo que es la periodontología en la actualidad. Ha sido muy especial para todos nosotros. El ver dientes con estas características y que pudiesen cambiar de un lado a otro y que, bueno, vean el aparato de inserción del diente 36, o sea, una inserción muy baja, una inserción atercioapical con prótesis ferolizadas. Creo que hoy en día eso no existiría más y de hecho ya no existe más, pero es un gran antecedente y para mí ha sido muy especial el poder reflexionar al respecto con estas publicaciones. Bueno, esto lo publicó el doctor Niemann y el doctor Lang. El doctor Lang, bueno, pues para mí ha sido, pues a raíz de esta publicación fue como un objetivo de gran curiosidad. ¿Quién es ese doctor? ¿Por qué publicó esto? Y más cuando me empecé a enterar de las publicaciones que el doctor Lang tenía en libros y colaboraciones como las que ha hecho en el libro del doctor Jan Linde. Todos conocemos los libros del doctor Jan Linde y la realidad es que el libro del doctor Jan Linde es el libro, pues, clásico, característico, es el libro de la periodontología moderna y es el libro de la odontología, periodontología que todos analizamos. Es un gran libro, la verdad es que es muy especial. Y bueno, la realidad es que el doctor Linde ha hecho bastante y si nos damos cuenta, ha sido pues el libro más citado de toda la historia, ¿no? Hablando de periodontología. Y en español lo tenemos, pero algo que es muy especial es que el libro del doctor Jan Linde ha sido altamente recurrente. Entonces, nosotros nos vamos a Amazon y buscamos lo que es el libro del doctor Jan Linde y nos encontramos con esto. Nos encontramos con precios estrepitosamente altos. Un libro, por ejemplo, del doctor Linde, que se vende en pasta dura de la séptima edición, la edición portuguesa del doctor Linde cuesta 5.873 pesos. Estamos hablando de casi $300. Vemos que el doctor Lang ha sido editor de muchos journals, como es el caso del Paleontology 2000. Ha sido pues realmente colaborador del doctor Linde desde la tercera edición y bueno, pues libros más, libros menos, a grado tal de que hoy en la séptima edición del doctor Linde, que es un libro de pasta dura que cuesta casi un poco más de $200, pues bueno, ya lo tenemos aquí, lo tenemos en esta séptima edición. Y bueno, pues el doctor Lang ha estado participando en todo esto. ¿Quién para nosotros es el doctor Niklaus Lang? Yo he estado persiguiendo un poco la publicación que les mostré y en el año 2008 tuve la oportunidad de conocer al doctor Lang en persona. Esto fue bien interesante porque tuve la oportunidad de verlo, porque antes lo que teníamos era pues lo que decía Google, aunque realmente estoy hablándoles de épocas donde Google no existía. El doctor Niklaus Lang es un doctor que ha tenido mucho que ver y si ustedes googlean, se van a poder dar cuenta que tiene demasiadas publicaciones y se habla mucho de él en todo el mundo, ¿no? Estas son las imágenes del doctor Lang. Si ustedes ponen el nombre del doctor Lang en Google, pues van a encontrar estas imágenes y este es el doctor Lang apenas hace unos años, unos buenos años cuando visitó Chile. Este es el doctor Lang. Era muy llamada la atención su corpulencia y que también era un doctor con fisionomías bastante amplias para América Latina, o sea, es un doctor de más de 1,85 metros, ¿no? O sea, es bastante grande. Y para mí todo eso significaba bastante, porque era una persona que yo la veía y decía, bueno, pues es muy admirado, es una persona muy grande, que en todos los sentidos de la palabra, una persona muy grande como persona, fisionómicamente hablando, y también muy grande con todo, porque ha hecho casi 1,000 publicaciones en odontología, es doctor honorario en muchas universidades y asociaciones. Pues bueno, pues fue en 1968, él logró tener un premio especial, ¿sí? En la Asociación Dental Suiza. En 1992, la IADR también le dio un premio especial de investigación básica y de ciencia. Ha sido fundador y ha sido presidente del ITI, del International Team for Implantology. O sea, él tiene toda la casuística, pues ha trabajado mucho para la periodontología a nivel mundial. El doctor Lang, no encontramos muchas entrevistas del doctor Lang en YouTube. De hecho, no hay mucho más que conferencias. Y bueno, de pronto nos encontramos con la posibilidad de coincidir con el doctor Lang y fue maravilloso, fue en el marco del Congreso APPO allá en Perú, en Cusco, Perú. Fue una experiencia bastante interesante porque estaba muy nervioso. Yo pensé que no iba a poder entrevistar al doctor Lang. De hecho, un día antes de la entrevista, ustedes están viendo una fotografía de la entrevista que vamos a presentar en unos momentos más. Tuve la oportunidad de compartir escenario con él, de exponer después de él. Y bueno, hay un TikTok donde yo platico de esta experiencia. De hecho, el doctor Lang no estuvo en mi conferencia, no creo que le haya interesado escucharme, se paró, se fue. Y yo le dediqué mi conferencia básicamente a él porque el artículo que les mostré hace unos momentos de 1994. Gracias a la doctora Carol Apaza, que es una gran amiga, compañera latinoamericana, periodista de Perú y que también trabaja en Europa y que conoce muy de cerca al doctor Lang. Tuvimos la oportunidad de acercarnos con el doctor Lang y poderle pues, pedir una entrevista y el espacio. El doctor Lang, pues como buen europeo, como pues que de hecho está acostumbrado al protocolo europeo, pensamos que iba a llegar puntual, no llegaba, pensamos que ya no iba a llegar porque no es muy afín a las redes sociales y esas cosas, pero sin embargo lo logramos. El doctor Lang nos dio una entrevista, la única entrevista que ha dado para un medio para América Latina es esta que van a ver a continuación en PerioMx. El personaje más longevo y más importante de la periodontología estuvo con nosotros. Agradecemos completamente todas las amabilidades que pudo tener el equipo del doctor Lang, la doctora Carla Paza, a la APPO. La verdad es que muchas gracias a la Asociación Peruana de Periodontología y su integración, este, al presidente Marco Alarcón y bueno, también haciendo una mención especial a nuestra casa Oral B, que ayudó a que esto pudiese ser posible. Una entrevista con palabras muy especiales que espero que ustedes las aprecien, las aprovechen, les guste. Fue un acontecimiento en lo personal, fue un acontecimiento de los más especiales que he vivido en toda mi vida. He tenido la oportunidad de entrevistar a grandes amigos y personalidades de la periodontología mundial. Ahora estuvo con nosotros el doctor Lang a sus 81 años. Encontramos a un doctor Lang diferente al doctor Lang que conocí en el 2008 en Argentina. Este es el doctor, la fotografía del antes y el después en el 2008, y ahora en el 2024. Ahora el doctor Lang lo vemos más delgado, lo vemos que se está cuidando y qué bueno. Ojalá tengamos a un doctor Lang para siempre, ¿no? Aunque siempre van a quedar sus textos, van a quedar pues sí, su curiosidad, va a quedar todo su dinamismo, su audacia científica y también las colaboraciones que ha tenido con personalidades como el doctor Linde, que platicó de él en esta entrevista, como el doctor Mariano Sanz, que también ha platicado mucho de él en muchas citas que ha tenido. Y bueno, queda bastante. Tuvimos la oportunidad de mostrar el periodontología e implantología, una obra latinoamericana por más de 20 autores mexicanos. Y bueno, ¿qué les digo? Me congratulo por la oportunidad que me da Dios, que me da la vida, por haber compartido un momento tan especial con un eje y con una persona que puede inspirar a muchos y que pues va a ser leído por todos nosotros en la historia de la periodoncia a nivel mundial. Pues lo tenemos aquí con ustedes, la entrevista con el doctor Niklaus Lang desde Cusco, Perú, para Perio MX, para toda América Latina. Gracias Oral B y gracias a todos los que influyeron en que pudiera ser posible estas palabras en redes sociales, porque no van a encontrar una entrevista así en ninguna red social y ahora con estos tiempos tenemos la oportunidad de compartir, darle voz a tantas personalidades que han escrito y que han aportado demasiado. Así que espero que la disfruten porque para mí pues fue un hecho, un sueño hecho realidad, un hecho sueño, un hecho sueño, un sueño hecho realidad. Muchas gracias, que la disfruten. Bueno amigos todos de APPO, Oral B, CEPA y Perio MX, lo prometido es deuda, estamos muy contentos el día de hoy. Tenemos aquí a un gran referente de la periodontología, el profesor Niklaus Lang. Profesor.
Buenos días.
Buenos días, thank you so much.
You're
and welcome to Latin America.
Yes.
Vamos a tener una pequeña entrevista con el doctor. We're going to take a brief interview with a few questions. You talk about periodontology, 70 years of periodontology.
Yes.
Can you imagine how can the periodontology grow, or will grow around this time in human being era?
Well, you see, I chose the title 70 years because I related it to a major change in how we get our evidence to be the basis for therapy. And that is 1952-53 with Jens Verhaug, the famous Norwegian. Originally he was a prosthodontist, but he became the periodontist. And that was the time when one changed a philosophy that was based on opinions of famous professors to a philosophy that was based on experimental research, because he did the first experimental studies in biology. And therefore, from then on, one can trace today that slowly but surely we started having longitudinal studies, we started measuring the outcomes of therapy, and we started developing a philosophy that shows us what is the essential part of periodontal therapy. And so this philosophy became more and more refined. And then in the latest 10 years, it became also oriented towards regenerating lost tissues. And that in itself was an era that took 20 years to develop for the clinic, so that the practitioner knows, here we can do it, here we have a success, and there it's not so predictable. So all of this is a completely different era than before 1952. And then let's face it, at the start of this century, implants were also getting very important, because they were getting predictable. Why? Because again, one was addressing the biology of healing when periodontists came into the field. Before, it was a trial and error approach, but after 1991, so we had very well done preclinical experiments that gave us the security to rely on implant healing, and therefore implants became more and more predictable. And obviously then it is a development that everybody wanted to do in plants without having the proper knowledge. And as a consequence, we start to have a new disease, which is called periimplantitis, which is enormously increasing in frequency because of people not being trained properly.
Maybe periimplantitis would be the new disease for this century, but I think that the 4 decades for the last century were crucial for paleontology. We read a lot about you, Dr. Lind, no, in the book. How did you face this change, periodontal, clinical dentistry, and implant dentistry, when the two disciplines are as a topic for study and in research?
You addressed the textbook that Jan Linde and I edited. Now it is the new edition is the 7th edition, which shows you there were 6 editions before, and there was quite a development. I have been part of that since the 4th edition, and now the 7th is called Linde's Clinical Periodontology and Implant Dentistry, because Jan Linde has retired from it, and I had been instrumental with Mariano Sanz, with Gianobile and Berglund to kind of promote and update all these chapters. And what we have done is we have streamlined things. There were things that we thought were very important at times, and then we found out that the practitioner really cannot cope with them, like in the pathogenesis section. And so we have simplified it and put it together. And whenever you simplify, you lose some details. But that doesn't matter. Basically, the development of a textbook that is rewritten every 5 years reflects or mirrors what happens in the public or in conventions.
And it's the main book of periodontology in the world. So
you know why?
Why?
Because it is evidence-based. In that book you find hardly any, that's the way I do it. It is always, this is the reason why it should be done like that.
Yeah.
And these are the studies. And when you just go from chapter to the bibliography, you find all the eminent and the important articles.
And when you mentioned Dr. Jan Linde, and how do you know Dr. Linde? You study with him? Was your professor?
Well, he is 70 years older than me. He just turned 89. Just a month in July. And he's still very quick in his mind, and but he retired now completely from lecturing and so on. I know Jan Linde because I was in Scandinavia. I was trained by Harald Löw. And we were the big competition with Gothenburg. And Jan Linde came to Gothenburg in the new faculty, I think 1969, and I came to Aarhus in 1971. Wow. So I knew that Gothenburg was the big competition, and I have been afraid of him all these years. Yeah, I have been afraid, and so when I had a sabbatical leave coming up, I said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I go into the cave of the lion." Wow. And I had asked him whether I could spend my sabbatical leave 3 months in Gothenburg in the year 2000, which he welcomed, and we became extremely good friends. Wow. Extremely good friends. And we call each other once a week. Oh, so we have a very good contact with each other. We know the wives and so on, the whole family. But we always, he may call me and say, "Klaus, you remember this and this study. Do you still have the original slides?" or stuff like that. We have a very close relationship.
And you were starting designing your presentations in, I think, and this kind of diapos of photos with a projector.
Yeah. You see, we in Scandinavia, I am from Switzerland, but I was in Aarhus, where I was trained in periodontology first. Then I went to Michigan, to another Scandinavian, to Ramford. And we were always a little bit the counterpoint of American periodontology, which was more, that's the way I do it. You know, the master clinician approach. Big names said, that's the way you do it. Like the Boston School, like the East Coast, West Coast, we call them gum cutters, or the Midwest approach, which was more Scandinavian. And we as Europeans, we were depleted of a lot of good manpower before the Second World War, because a lot of them were Jews and had to emigrate. So after the Second World War, it started very slowly, as I said, with Verhaug. And Verhaug had this different approach, and that is what we defended. And time has given us right. So today, the Americans, they don't admit it, but they look on Europe.
On Europe, yeah. And we face this topic in the new classification, in the actual classification.
Yeah.
We have the two societies, the most important societies, join each other,
yeah.
And we have the new classification. What is your opinion about, since 2018 to right now, 6 years ago, 6 years for new classification? Well, it's a good moment for the paleontology and in diagnostics too, no?
Oh, you're asking me a very ticklish question, because I have been participating in 3 classification workshops.
Yeah. 1999, or what's the first one?
1999 and the one before. And it actually always dealt with this other periodontal disease that can progress very rapidly. It used to be juvenile periodontitis, then it became aggressive periodontitis, and now we have another system.
Stage 4, grade C.
Staging, yes, the staging and grading is actually a system that was adapted from cancer diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And it has done away with some beliefs. And it has put things on a more solid ground. And when we talk about it today, I think we are more on equal terms if we accept this new classification. And I have in the past 6 years not experienced any real opposition to it. While the classification before, which I was very happy with, was never accepted by, for instance, I don't tell you which nation. But no, it was in Europe that it was not accepted all over the place. So I think that a classification is something where everybody can chip in, everybody can have an opinion. But when you then sit down in a workshop and write this down, then you have to come up with solid evidence. And that is where you distinguish between the fact and the beliefs.
Yeah.
And so I think the now classification is very good to work together. And it may be that we modify as we go along based on new avenues or new visions that we get. But I think we ought to stick to it because classification is not the yolk of the egg.
Yeah.
I think it is just I would say, a mean to get understood.
Mm. So right now, in this time, in this era, we have in artificial intelligence, AA. So a lot of students ask to me, and then I ask to you, it will be possible to think that artificial intelligence could help us to diagnosis, like ChatGPT and that kind of tools?
I think, yes, a little bit, but no. I think, you see, it's like in the old days we said in the computer, garbage in, garbage out. When you have artificial intelligence, it can only, on the basis of a database, of a large database, specify things. But you can see it when you, for instance, have a translator, that some of the translations are completely off.
Yeah.
They use the same words, but in another sequence.
Totally agree.
So you cannot abandon the human brain today. For diagnosis, I don't think artificial intelligence will be something that we will introduce in our offices, but it will be introduced in algorithms that we develop to improve, let's say, prognosis. And we have in Bern, we have in our department Christoph Ramsayer, who is a real maverick in artificial intelligence. He uses that as a tool to get further on the basis of our own database. And there he can save time, yes. But that is not for the general dentist to be used. They shouldn't be afraid of that.
Yeah, claro. So, and then, well, yesterday I had a lecture after you, and for me it was an honor. I dedicate my lecture to you, and one of my reference there was the paper that published with Dr. Niemans and Paleontology 2000.
Yes.
A lot of time in 1994, I guess.
Yeah.
So, well,
Is that the one on the bridges?
Yeah, the bridges. Right now, we are rescuing in this kind of countries in Latin America the possibility to make this kind of periodontal prostheses with a large bridges and with a equal good reference for occlusal things. So, what is your point about that? In the moment that we recognized the ligament, the periodontal ligament reference right now in biology.
I'm happy about this question, but I hope not to disappoint you, because I can only say I had this idea really from Sture Neumann. I've learned it every bit from Sture Neumann's work, and he was certainly periodontist, but he before was also a prosthodontist, and I began to be a prosthodontist too, and we were completely going against the public opinion on trauma from occlusion. The Gothenburg School has put the evidence on the map how we should look at occlusion. And occlusion is important. Of course, I have to be able to bite.
Yeah.
But the point is, with these large bridges, that was a time where we didn't have implants. They were not available on a regular basis yet in the early 90s. So we had, with the natural dentition, we had all but abutments that may have been in bad shape, and we had to treat them. And we could treat them. And we have hundreds of cases now that have been treated like that. Some have passed away because the time has gone, you know. And I think still today that this is a way of reconstructing mutilated dentitions where we have lost multiple teeth in a very positive way. But it takes a lot of precision, and it takes also a very good knowledge on prosthetic issues. And that has been vanished in the recent years because of the industry who tries to sell implants. You know, they make unbelievable money. You know, you go to any congress, you find at least 5 implant companies, and they do not give you evidence of what is it that you should follow. They say, well, our implant system has this and that, without even giving you data. And so we have lost quite a bit of prosthetic knowledge. And therefore, I must also say it is easier today to treatment plan, including implants, but not taking implants for granted, or even taking out the teeth to place implants, as in this ridiculous concept of all on 4. And then you take out living organisms, teeth that you can save, and yet you then place implants, and you forget while placing them that they start a new life, and that new life, until it has 40 years on the shoulders, it may not be that successful as teeth. And actually, we have the data today that implants are by no means better than teeth.
So, and when we make retrospective studies, when we evaluate this kind of long bridges in teeth versus all-on-4 in a patient with perio susceptibilities, so we can find that maybe these long bridges in teeth with a good supportive therapy program versus implant dentistry for all-on-4, all-on-6, all-on-8 without no supportive therapy program, we have a good relevance and good successful goals in teeth versus in implants.
First, let me say that such a study, a randomized controlled clinical trial, does not exist. So we cannot really say this is better or worse. But by deductive thinking and interpreting the literature as it is, we know that the first concept was successful. And we also know that the taking out teeth to place implants philosophy does not work. It does not work because people do not do the maintenance as they should. And the secret is in the details and in the details of maintenance.
Yeah.
If you have patients who do not perform because they have never been told, or they don't want to care for it and they think the dentist does it for them, this is not going to work for a long time. Maybe for some years, but all of a sudden you have reinfection. These are elements that are in a biological oral cavity, and it has very little to do with mechanics. I mean, talking about the famous trauma from occlusion, for me it doesn't really exist anymore. Not in implant dentistry, because osseointegration is so strong that you cannot mechanically move it out, a tooth, an implant. So you will have to do unbelievable forces and so on. I think we have to march back towards the biological end and to get better understood. I can show you, not only cases, but series of cases, studies that will demonstrate that the survival of bridges with long span or with little support are, I'm diplomatic, at least as successful as the best implant solutions. Now, you know, the implant solutions per se is not the placement of the implant. I mean, the one who places the implant is the least important person. It is the person who plans, a treatment plan that is reasonable. Of course, you have to place the implant and have a good prosthetic appliance, but then the maintenance of it and to cope with complications. This is where the secret lies, and this is where we are going to be busy in courses and so on.
So, in a few questions only, short answers. What's your opinion about electrical toothbrushes? I think that in this era...
Very easy. They work.
They work.
Yeah.
So.
But they don't work better than the hand brushing. No. It's another, slightly other technique, and you have to instruct somebody for an electric toothbrush if he changes to electric toothbrush in the positioning and so on. But they work. And there are plenty of studies who show that they are not superior. And they are, on the other hand, we used to think they are for handicapped people only. No, they can work very well. That's Oral-B here. Huh?
Yeah.
They work very well. But you need to instruct the patient in the use of an electric toothbrush also.
So, and the last questions. I'm a professor in Mexico, in the National University of Mexico. I'm a 20 years professor from this university. And And we have this a challenge in periodontal dentistry. We have this specialty, periodontics or periodontology and implant dentistry. And we saw that students choose one discipline for another, maybe implant dentistry. Can you give a message for the students of periodontics all around the world, in Latin America mainly, that, well, this discipline is together, it's joined, it's periodontal and implant dentistry.
I'm happy about that, because I tell you frankly, and that is my honest opinion, there is no place for somebody in implant dentistry unless he is a periodontist. He needs to have the biological knowledge of a periodontist. First, when you are this, you switch into implant dentistry, because there are so many parallels and there are so many discrepancies. But you need to be competent in the biological part, and it is not placing a screw into bone, which we can do in vitro. You have to, as I said, the treatment planning, the analysis of the patient, and all of that, to treat the patient rather than to place an implant.
Well, we have this kind of slogan: no implant if no proving.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be a good main to close. So thank you so much, Dr. Lang.
You're
Gracias
welcome.
a todos en PerioMx, gracias a todos en APPO.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias a Oral B, gracias a toda Latinoamérica que han hecho posible esta gran entrevista con uno de mis ídolos. Y bueno, quiero hacer una mención, esto es algo muy especial. We have a book in Mexico. It's not a gift, but maybe in another time I will give you this book as a gift. But I want to show you this kind of book. This is the most important book in Latin America that you was one of our inspiration. We are 28 authors from Mexico. You are seated
And
here.
you know what I like best? Look at the title page. It's a periodontal probe.
It's a periodontal probe.
And you see, there are implant dentists who don't even own one.
That's right.
It's a very simple instrument, but we know a lot of what it does. And when you have this on the title page, you show that you're going the right way. Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
And you're our inspiration.
Thank you.
Gracias al Dr. Lang. Seguimos aquí en PerioMx y en APPO. Gracias a todos.